The young and the restless spoilers shock. Beneath the glittering surface of Genoa City, where power is traded like currency and alliances shift as quickly as the wind, there emerges a revelation so shattering it threatens to undo not only lives but the very fabric of truth itself. For months, perhaps even years, Victoria believed she had found something resembling peace in the quiet bond she shared with Claire. After the upheavals of her past relationships, betrayals at Newman Enterprises, and the constant weight of being Victor's daughter, she had taken solace in what seemed to be the miracle of having her long-lost child by her side. Claire was warm, attentive, eager to fill the empty spaces that Victoria had carried inside her for decades. Together they began weaving the threads of a new life, with Victoria finally allowing herself to feel that her sacrifices had been worth it. But this was the cruelest illusion of all, a mirage orchestrated by a woman whose only true allegiance was to chaos. Jordan, the calculating figure whose manipulations had already left so many scars, had constructed this entire elaborate deception with terrifying precision. To the world, she presented Claire as the child stolen from Victoria's arms, but the truth was darker and far more grotesque. Claire was not Victoria's daughter at all, but rather a pawn, an orphan girl molded into a role she did not truly belong to. Jordan had gone as far as to fabricate DNA results, weaving science into her lies to erase any doubt. She had created a narrative so airtight that even Victoria, with all her instincts, had been convinced. Jordan fed on Victoria's vulnerability, exploiting the wreck of a mother who had lost her child, knowing that in her desperation Victoria would not question what her heart wanted to believe. Claire was given the name, the history, and the love that rightfully belonged to another, while the real daughter lived an entirely different life, oblivious to the truth of her birthright. The horrifying twist came not in a laboratory or a courtroom but in something far more intimate, far more undeniable. Victoria's eyes had been drawn to Audra, the sharp and ambitious woman who had built a reputation in Genoa City for her cunning strategies and relentless ambition. There had always been something enigmatic about Audra, a strength and resilience that seemed to stem from an unshakable core, and while Victoria admired her professionally, she had never suspected their lives could be intertwined in such a visceral way. That all changed the moment she saw the necklace. A simple piece of jewelry, yet weighted with a lifetime of memories. It was the necklace Victoria had placed her on her infant's neck on that fateful night her child was ripped away from her arms. A mother's instinct, suppressed and muted for so long by lies, exploded to the surface in that instant. She knew what she was looking at. She knew this was not coincidence or fabrication. Audra was wearing the very symbol of her bloodline, and the truth Victoria had been blind to now blazed before her like a flame that refused to be extinguished. The ground beneath her seemed to fracture as she pieced it together. If Audra was her daughter, then everything she had shared with Claire was built on sand. Every tender word, every promise, every embrace had been part of a stage play written by Jordan. It was not Claire's fault she had been caught in the web as much as Victoria had, but that made the betrayal cut even deeper. Jordan had stolen not only Victoria's child but also her very sense of reality. She had robbed her of years, stolen milestones that should have been hers to experience as a mother, and dangled a false version of them in front of her face. Worse still, Audra herself had no idea of the truth, continuing to build her own identity, unaware that the life she had lived was never hers by choice. She had been shaped by forces she could not see, raised under circumstances that had buried her true heritage. And now she stood unknowingly in front of the very mother who had mourned her for decades. Victoria's mind spun with questions. How could she reveal this to Audra without shattering her entire sense of self? How could she make amends for years of absence when those years had been stolen from her? And how could she even begin to address the damage done to Claire, who, despite not being her biological daughter, had loved her with a devotion that now would feel tainted by deception? The cruel irony was that Victoria now faced not one child but two, one bound to her by blood, another bound to her by love. Jordan's monstrous manipulation had twisted something as sacred as motherhood into a cruel test of loyalty and truth. But Victoria's instincts, honed by her years under Victor's shadow and sharpened by her own struggles in business and family, would not allow her to falter. She had uncovered the truth, and she would not let Jordan win. For too long, others had defined her story, manipulated her emotions, and dictated her relationships. Now, Armed with the undeniable evidence of the necklace, she resolved to reclaim what was hers. Audra may not yet understand the weight of what she carried, but Victoria knew she had to fight to bring her daughter back into the fold of the family that had been denied to her. The question remained, would Audra accept this revelation, or would the shock of it push her further away, into denial or rebellion? The implications rippled far beyond Victoria herself. The Newman family, long accustomed to secrets and betrayals, would be thrown into another storm. Nick, Adam, Nikki, and Victor would all find themselves caught in the fallout of this revelation, each interpreting its meaning through their own ambitions and grudges. Audra's position in Genoa City, both personally and professionally, would be transformed overnight. No longer just a cunning outsider, she would be a Newman, tied by blood to the dynasty she had once maneuvered against. The power dynamics would shift, alliances would fracture, and Jordan's carefully crafted web would unravel in ways even she had not predicted. As for Claire, her world would collapse. The identity she had been given, the love she thought was hers, all of it would dissolve under the weight of truth. Would she cling desperately to Victoria, begging to remain part of her life, or would she lash out, consumed by bitterness at being used as a pawn? Either way, Jordan's cruel scheme guaranteed pain and division. That was always her goal: to destroy, to hollow out, to leave nothing but ruin behind. And yet, perhaps in that ruin lay the seeds of something new: Victoria reclaiming her daughter, Audra finding the family she never knew, and the Newmans rallying not just against an enemy but around a truth that had been stolen for too long. This revelation was not merely another plot twist in the endless drama of Genoa City. It was a seismic shift that redefined characters, families, and futures. In one moment, the necklace had undone years of deception. In one moment, Victoria had gone from believing she was the mother of one to realizing she had been the mother of another all along. And in one moment, the war for identity, loyalty, and love had been reignited with a fury that would consume everyone in its path. The unraveling of Claire's identity is nothing short of a cataclysm waiting to strike Genoa City. A storm that has been building beneath the surface for far too long and now threatens to consume everyone caught within its path. For Victoria, the truth that Audra is in fact her real daughter comes as both a blessing and a cruel curse. It vindicates the gnawing suspicion in her heart when she saw the necklace, that undeniable tether to her stolen child. And yet it simultaneously destroys the fragile sanctuary she thought she had built with Claire. What began as healing the mother reunited with the daughter she believed she lost is morphed into betrayal, deceit, and the realization that she has been nurturing a bond rooted in Jordan's monstrous manipulation. The consequences are inevitable. Claire's place within the Newman family, already precarious, will collapse entirely once the DNA confirms what Victoria already knows in her bones. Audra, however, is the tragic soul in this revelation. She came to Genoa City with her ambition sharpened like a blade, but behind her calculated moves was a woman searching for belonging, for answers to questions she may not have even dared to whisper. If fate had been kinder, she would have been embraced immediately, folded into the Newman dynasty as a daughter who was stolen and finally restored to her rightful place. Instead, she has spent her time battling suspicions, winning enemies, and standing alone in a city that never quite opened its arms to her. And now, at the very moment when her bloodline is exposed, when she should be lifted into the embrace of her mother and the Newman family, she risks being pushed away, her past sins and ruthless reputation overshadowing the vulnerable truth of her identity. Is it fair that the same family who wept for a missing child now recoils at the daughter who returns to them, tainted not by her own choices but by the circumstances she was thrust into? The tragedy of Audra lies in the cruel paradox of being both desired and rejected, both the answer to a mother's grief and the bearer of the weight of years lost. Claire, on the other hand, will face annihilation. Every shred of her carefully constructed life in Genoa will collapse when the truth emerges. She is not the child of Victoria Newman. She is not entitled to the legacy she has been led to believe was hers. She is instead the victim of Jordan's lies, molded into a role that was never hers to inhabit. For Victoria, this revelation severs the cord of maternal love she thought was sacred, and for Genoa, it makes Claire nothing more than a fraud, however unintentional. Whispers will spread, doors will close, and she will be treated as an impostor who infiltrated one of the most powerful families in town. The world she thought she belonged to will turn its back on her, and she will stand on the precipice of ruin. And yet, within that ruin lies the possibility of resilience, if she can endure the humiliation and carve out an identity of her own beyond Victoria's name. It is here that Call's role becomes pivotal. For while Genoa may cast Claire aside, and Victoria may harden her heart against the falsehoods that define their relationship, Call has never loved her for the blood that supposedly ran through her veins. He saw her not as a Newman, not as an extension of Victoria's empire, but as Clara, the woman who stirred something in him that he could not ignore. His love was built on something deeper than family name or legacy, something that might be the only lifeline left for Claire when the truth detonates. But love in Genoa City is never simple, never free of consequence. If Kyle chooses to stand by her, he risks the wrath of his own family, the disapproval of the Newmans, and the fallout of aligning himself with a woman who will soon be branded a liar, usurper, an outcast. Yet if he turns away, Claire loses the only anchor she has left, the last person who saw her for who she truly was and not for who Jordan forced her to become. The impending DNA results will therefore do more than expose a secret. They will set off a chain reaction. Audra, rightful daughter, will step into the light of Victoria's recognition. But whether she is embraced or shunned depends on whether the Newmans can rise above their pride and history to accept her. Claire will be expelled, abandoned by a family that was never hers, but perhaps saved by a love that defies bloodlines. And Kyle will face his own crucible, forced to prove whether his devotion is as unconditional as he claims, or whether it will collapse under the weight of scandal and scorn. Genoa City thrives on such upheaval, and in this case, Jordan's design has delivered exactly what she wanted: destruction, confusion, and division. Yet what Jordan could never anticipate is that from destruction may come rebirth, chance for Victoria to reclaim her daughter, for Audra to find her place, and for Claire to prove that her worth is not defined by a lie but by her own strength and the man who may choose to stand by her side.